Now, if you are a 200-pound professional athlete and your bench press is only 170 pounds, that is incredibly weak for not only a professional athlete, but just for a 200-pound man in general. Hey everyone, welcome back and thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to be taking you through a couple accessory lifts you can incorporate into your training program to not only improve your bench press, but also eliminate shoulder pain. But before we start, I would just like to ask that if you would like to see more of these types of videos in the future, be sure to smash that like button so I know to make more of these types of videos. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell as I will be uploading new videos daily. Now on to today's video. The two exercises that I'm going to be demonstrating for you today are going to be the low pulley cable external rotation hand over opposite hip and the low pulley trap 3 raise. But before I get started, I would just like to explain why exactly those exercises are important and why, if you don't strengthen those muscles, they can be a hindrance on your performance and on your shoulder health. Now, one of the reasons that a lot of people are really weak when it comes to bench press is not because of the chest, triceps, or anterior deltoids. It's because their stabilizer muscles and the antagonist muscles are weak. A lot of times, if your accelerators are too strong and your decelerators are too weak, you're not going to have enough stability in the joints. And because you don't have enough stability in the joint, it will affect your performance. One of the ways that we can improve the bench press is not by directly working on the bench press, but working on those stabilizer muscles. Now, when it comes to the shoulder, one of the key areas in stabilizing the shoulder is going to be the rotator cuff muscles. When it comes to the rotator cuff muscles, the external rotation hand over opposite hip is going to address that issue. Another issue is going to be with the scapular retractors. The scapular retractors are the muscles that retract the scapula, as the name would imply. And the trap 3 raise, the low pulley trap 3 raise, is going to address that issue. By strengthening your external rotators and your scapular retractors, oftentimes what you will see is that your bench press will improve, and also if you do have any issues with shoulder pain, that will also be addressed by incorporating those exercises. Just a recent example, one of my fighters was headlining a UFC Fight Pass card back in January, I believe it was January 20th or 21st, and he was having some issues with his right shoulder. Every time he would go to throw a punch, he would be a little bit hesitant because he had a little bit of a twinge in his shoulder. I ended up doing an assessment on him. We ended up doing a 1-rep max test, and we also did some accessory lifts just to kind of see how his strength was in the scapular retractors and in the external rotators. And what we found was that his scapular retractors and his external rotators were incredibly weak. To give you an idea, this is a professional athlete at one of the highest levels, and his bench press, he was a 200-pound athlete, and at the time, his bench press was only 175 pounds. Now, if you are a 200-pound professional athlete and your bench press is only 170 pounds, that is incredibly weak for not only a professional athlete, but just for a 200-pound man in general. If you are 200 pounds, ideally you should be able to bench press your own weight. Now, the bench press that we did for the assessment, it's not your typical bench press that you would do in a regular gym setting if you're trying to improve your bench press. It was a biacromial bench press. So a biacromial bench press, you basically put your hands straight out. Wherever your index fingers lie, that's where you grab a hold of the bar. And the reason it's called a biacromial bench press is because when you put your fingers straight out, your fingertips line up with the acromion. So by lining it up with the acromion, it's going to be a lot more difficult. So if he had done a regular bench press, it would have been quite as low, but it's still concerning that at 200 pounds, a professional athlete cannot bench press their own weight. Another issue that he had, aside from just being weak in the bench press, when we did the external rotator work and the scapular retractor work to test the muscles and see exactly how strong or weak they were, he failed both of those tests. Both of them were really weak. The external rotation was weak, but the scapular retractors were very weak. So we ended up incorporating that into his training routine, and the way that I incorporated it when I was periodizing his plan getting ready for the fight was because he was incredibly weak in those two lifts, we did 2 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions at a 4:01:0 tempo at the start of his routine. Then we did the bulk of his strength training routine, and then at the very end we finished off with another 2 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions at a 4:0:20 tempo. And in terms of the rest period, we rested 1 minute in between each set, and we would superset each. So we would superset the external rotation with the low pulley trap 3 raise. After just a few sessions, there was huge improvement in not only his bench press, but also the pain he was experiencing in his shoulder. I was speaking to his striking coach, and his striking coach was saying, I don't know what you're doing with this guy, but whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because he's not feeling that pain in his shoulder and he's just letting it go. Normally what would happen, according to his striking coach, is whenever he would throw his right hand, which was his power hand, he would be a little bit hesitant because he had a little bit of a pinch in his shoulder. As soon as we started doing the external rotation and the scapular retractor work, all that pinching went away and he was able to throw that right hand without experiencing any type of pinching, and he didn't even have to think about it. Whereas in his previous fight, he had headlined Madison Square Garden last June. For that fight, his shoulder was really messed up and he was a little bit hesitant when throwing the hook. So for his next fight, that was one thing that I really wanted to address, especially since this was the first time that I was going to be in charge for his strength and conditioning. For the fight prior where he headlined Madison Square Garden, I was just in charge of his therapy. I was responsible for doing the fascial stretch therapy and making sure that he was able to do his boxing training in order to get to the fight. For this last fight, not only did we work on fascial stretch therapy and improving his mobility and range of motion, but that one we also did a lot of strength and conditioning, and by incorporating the strength and conditioning, aside from the pinching going away, his bench press improved dramatically. He ended up going from a 170-pound bench press to a 200-pound bench press in just 6 workouts. So there was a huge improvement in his bench press just from incorporating those 2 accessory lifts. Now I'm going to show you how to perform those accessory lifts. Alright, so the first exercise is going to be the low pulley external rotation hand over opposite hip. As the exercise implies, you're going to be doing external rotation and your hand is going to be over your opposite hip. So whatever side you are working, for this view right over here, I'm going to be doing my left side. So my left side should be on the opposite side of the cable attachment that I'm going to be grabbing. You want to grab it with a neutral grip, so you're not grabbing it supinated, you're not grabbing it pronated, neutral, which means your palm is facing your stomach. What you're going to do for this one, take a couple steps out so that the weight is elevated while you're doing the exercise. And what you want to do for this one is you are going to externally rotate for 2 seconds, come back for 4 seconds, and you want to keep your elbow tucked to your body. It's going to look like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. A couple things worth noting with this exercise. Number 1, you want to make sure that you keep that elbow nice and tucked in. As you get into external rotation, your lats will engage a little bit and it is going to make your elbow come out. That's going to be okay. What you don't want to do though is when you are doing the external rotation, you don't want to actively abduct your shoulder and go into external rotation. It's okay if your elbow slightly comes out because of lat engagement. It's not okay if you abduct your shoulder and that's the reason for your elbow coming out. So going like that is perfectly fine. What you don't want to do is this. A lot of people are going to do that, especially when they notice that they're getting a little bit weaker towards the end of the set. They'll try to cheat by bringing the arm out like that because it's going to make it a lot easier. You want to avoid that. If you really want to target the external rotators as effectively as possible, you want to eliminate abduction and you want to only focus on external rotation. And by doing that, you have to keep the elbow tucked in nice and close to your body. By keeping it tucked in, then you're maximizing the amount of receptors that you will get in the external rotators as opposed to recruiting from other muscle groups. Here's what it looks like from behind. So what you want to do, same thing, your elbow's tucked in. I'm doing my right arm, so my right arm is opposite to the cable attachment that I'm grabbing a hold of. And I'm going to keep my shoulder blades retracted. Another thing, you don't want to protract, so you don't want to do this. You want to make sure that your shoulders are retracted and depressed. Then from here, keeping your elbow tucked in, you're going to externally rotate for 2 seconds. So 1, 2, and then come back 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is how you do the low pulley external rotation hand over opposite hip. That's another key part. Remember, the hand is going to be over the opposite hip. By keeping the hand over the opposite hip, this is going to be the easiest variation. There are other variations that involve the hand being over the stomach and the hand over the same side hip, but the further out you go into abduction, the more difficult it's going to be. So if your bench press is really, really weak because you have weak external rotators, you don't want to skip ahead to one of those more advanced variations. You want to stick to the simplest one, and that is going to be the hand over the opposite hip with the elbow tucked in nicely. Once you're able to do that and you get your strength up, then you can progress to one of the more difficult variations. But for your first time trying this, stick to this variation. That covers it for that exercise. The second accessory exercise that you can incorporate if you're having difficulty with either your bench press or with issues with your shoulders is going to be the low pulley trap 3 raise. Your trapezius is this large muscle in your back, and basically the trap 3 raise is going to target the lower fibers that run diagonally and up. And in order to recruit the most amount of fibers in that muscle, in that lower trap fibers, what we want to do is you are going to come up at about a 45-degree angle, and you are also going to depress and retract your shoulder blade just as you were for the external rotation exercise. One very important thing when doing this exercise is a lot of people are dominant in their upper trapezius and their lower trapezius is very, very weak. So a lot of people, when they do this exercise, what they're gonna do is shrug up. Because again, that muscle is so dominant, so it's gonna make them want to shrug up. You don't wanna do that. When you're doing this exercise, you wanna keep your shoulder blade retracted and depressed, and also your upper trap should be nice and relaxed. If I were to demonstrate this exercise and come behind you and poke your trap, you could see right there, or at least you should be able to see, that it's nice and soft. I'm not flexing it whatsoever. A lot of people, what they're going to do is they're going to tense up, and then you can, I don't know if you can see, but right now that muscle is rock hard. You want to avoid that. When doing this exercise, make sure that your upper trap is completely relaxed and that you're getting all the recruitment from your lower trap. Now, in terms of specifically how to perform this exercise, just as we were with the external rotation, we want it on a low pulley setting. When I say low pulley, what that means is basically below your shoulder. So for this exercise over here, I have it set to level 12, just as I was with the external rotation. Depending on your height, you could change it, but the important thing is, when you are from this side over here, when you're looking from the side, you want the cable to kind of follow that 45-degree angle. So for me, this height is perfect. One of the things that you're gonna do for this exercise, again, so you are going to start by retracting and depressing your shoulder blade. Then you are going to come out at a 45-degree angle. And once you're out at a 45-degree angle, again, make sure that this muscle is completely relaxed and that you are not engaging it. If you are engaging that muscle, you're not recruiting the proper muscle fibers, and if you're not recruiting the proper muscle fibers, you're not going to elicit the response that you want to get from the exercise. This one is very, very important, and a lot of people do this exercise incorrectly. This is one of those exercises that gets completely overlooked because most people tend to focus on the more superficial muscle fibers and more superficial muscles like the upper traps. Nobody really gives a crap about the lower trap fibers, so everybody neglects those muscles, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of people have either weakness in their bench press or pain in their shoulder. It's because those external rotators and scapular retractors are very, very weak. I'm going to show you this exercise now from a different angle. So again, the first thing we're going to do is step back so that the weight is suspended in the air. Then to initiate the movement, you are going to retract and depress your shoulder blade, and then with your thumb facing the ceiling, come out to a 45-degree angle without flexing that muscle. So you can see it's nice and soft. I'm not shrugging up, and it's not rock hard. So you want to retract, come up, keeping that muscle nice and soft, and then come back down. And the tempo is going to be the same as it was for the external rotation. So we're going to do a 2-second concentric followed by a 4-second eccentric phase. And it's going to look like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is how that exercise should be performed. Once again, perform these 2 exercises in superset fashion. If you are really, really weak in your external rotators and scapular retractors, what you can do is 2 sets at the beginning of your bench and pull workout. So anytime you're doing push and pull, 2 sets at the beginning, 2 sets at the end of the workout. If you're not that bad in terms of your strength in those muscle groups, then you can do 2 at the very end of the workout and you don't need to do the 2 at the beginning. It's going to come down to how weak are you in those 2 lifts. In terms of the acute exercise variables, you're going to do 2 sets at the beginning for 10 to 12 repetitions using 70% of your 1 repetition maximum. In terms of the tempo, it's going to be a 4-0-2-0 tempo, which means you are going to be lowering the weight for 2 seconds, lowering the weight for 4 seconds, and then lifting the weight for 2 seconds. For the external rotation, you're coming back in for the count of 4 seconds, and then externally rotating for 2 seconds. And you are going to rest for 60 seconds in between each exercise. And once again, these exercises are supersetted. So you're going to do the external rotation, the trap 3 raise. You rest 60 seconds in between each one, not at the end of both. So it's external rotation, rest 60 seconds, trap 3 raise, rest 60 seconds, external rotation, rest 60 seconds, trap 3 raise, rest 60 seconds. You do your entire push-pull workout, and then at the end of your push-pull workout, you do those 2 exercises for 2 more sets the exact same way you did them at the beginning of the routine. That pretty much covers it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video and would like to see more of these types of videos, be sure to smash that like button so I know to upload more of these types of technique videos. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. That's it for today's video, and I will see you again tomorrow.